Hi, I'm Stephanie Laska. I lost 140 pounds and created Dirty Lazy Keto. Thanks for joining me here on the YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe and enjoy the show. And I have with me a very special guest today. She is amazing, and I cannot wait to introduce you to a fantastic success story. And her name is Debra. So I'm going to let Debra say hello to everybody.
Hi there. So yes, I'm Debra Ball.
And how old are you, Debra, if I may ask?
You certainly may. I'm 68. I just turned 68 a month ago.
Are you serious right now?
I'm serious.
Before we even started recording, I was like, I want your hair because her hair is the cutest in the whole wide world. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I think you must jump over to YouTube so that you can see how darling Debra's hair is. And she doesn't look a day over 30, in my opinion.
Thank you. You're my new best friend.
Well, you're my new best friend. I'm just so proud of you. I think you've accomplished so much in a short amount of time. And I can't wait for you to tell our listeners a little bit about your journey. So Why don't you tell us a little bit, maybe where you started off in terms of weight and where you're at in your current weight, how much weight you've lost?
Sure. Well, like many women, after I hit menopause, I started slowing down. I wasn't as active. I was eating too many snack foods. And every year I gained, 5-6 pounds. Well, pretty soon, about a little over a year ago, I found myself at my heaviest weight. And I was 200 pounds, which for me, I never imagined that I could reach that. And COVID happened. And then I was home. My workplace closed for a while. And I just started snacking from all the stress. And I thought, I've got to do something. This is really time to do something. And I came across an article in Woman's World magazine. And it was the article featuring your program, Dirty Lazy Keto, with the two sisters that went on the program. I think it was maybe about April of 2020 is my recollection when the magazine came out. And I looked through it and I thought, wait, I might be able to do this. I tried so many other things before and, had lost a little bit of weight, but never anything significant. I thought, I just might be able to do this. And in total, I've lost 50 pounds over that period of time. I started on my birthday in May, so it's been about 1 year, and I'm still working. Another 10 pounds would probably make me happy, but I don't feel compelled to really stress out about it. I've been very relaxed about it. I see keto, Dirty Lazy Keto, as my lifetime program now, and I'm working my changes accordingly.
Wow, that is amazing and so inspirational. And I'm curious too, you said that you saw the magazine. Now tell me, where were you? Were you like at the grocery store? Like, I want to picture this. I want to picture you.
I think I was at the grocery store and I saw the picture and the woman that was on the cover picture, she was, not like a 20-year-old. I mean, she was someone that I could relate to, somebody that I felt, this might be interesting to read. And then I bought it and I thought, well, it's worth a try. And the more I read about it, the more fascinated I was. And of course, it mentioned that you had a website and Facebook and that you'd written a book. So I ran out and bought the book. And I went on to the Facebook page and found out about the group, the Premier group, and decided that would be a good way for me to have support with other people, and joined it. And I've been listening to your chats almost every week since then.
Well, I feel like we've gotten to know each other for a long time, but this is actually our very first time speaking like live and seeing each other. So it's pretty cool, right?
Absolutely.
And I love how you said that when you saw the Women's World magazine article on the cover, it was Barbara and Carol. And I love how you said that they were your age or, near your age. And that made you feel, like safer, like, hey, if these ladies can do it and they're maybe going through some of the similar challenges that I am at your age, your young age, very young age, then it kind of offers hope, doesn't it? I mean, really, it's not just the teeny boppers out there doing crash dieting. I mean, I'm past that, aren't you?
I have very much. I mean, I had tried so many. I think there's a list of about 20 different diet programs that I've tried over the past 15, 20 years. And again, tiny little success with each of them. And then I would just find that I couldn't do them permanently. I couldn't make the changes. I was so tired of just plain salads. And so many of them featured low fat food. And I didn't realize that might actually contribute more to your hunger. And that the important difference with keto is having enough fat to be able to satisfy your hunger so that you didn't feel cravings all the time. And wow, that sure happened for me, probably within 3 or 4 days after I started it and really focused on the fat. I'm like, I'm not hungry. This is amazing. This is the first time.
Like ever. No, I get that.
Yes.
I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I was a young person, and my mother and my grandmother and my doctor, everybody was so upset with me because I was very, very chubby and inactive and only liked those high carb foods. And they kept saying, cut back on the fat. She must be eating too much fat. No butter, no cheese, no sour cream for you. And they were so freaked out about eggs and butter and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little girl. I didn't know what was going on. So I'm like you, like this has been a revelation kind of.
Yes. And I had been a little bit familiar with low carb before. I had done the Atkins program for a few weeks, but I didn't really understand about the importance of the fat. And I just focused on the cutting back of the carbs. And it's when I learned that you really have to do both. You have to cut back on your carbs, and you have to make sure that you have enough fat to satisfy your hunger and to help the ketosis process. I mean, that was a real revelation for me.
Yeah, I think you summed it up in a nutshell. Like, that's it. People get so worked up sometimes about keto and the lifestyle and dirty lazy keto and, oh, what do I have to do? I have to go buy all these things and MCT oil and avocados and coconut. And I'm like, no, slow down. It's not that complicated. Like you, Debra, just explained it in 2 sentences, really.
And for me, it started working right from the get-go. I followed advice about trying to take a little bit of magnesium at first. So I never had what they sometimes call the keto flu, where people don't feel well for a few days. That never happened to me. And I felt great. I actually started feeling better, more energetic. And, the longer I went, the better I felt.
That's amazing. Well, it sounds like you were about 200, you said at your heaviest, and then down to 150. But put that in perspective, because for some of us who are, some of our listeners are on Spotify or iHeartRadio or Apple Podcasts, so they can't see you. So they're wondering how tall you are. Let's put that in perspective.
I'm 5'4"-ish, in that range.
So for 5'4", 200 for you was a big difference.
Technically I was in the obese category. And now I'm just at the very north end of normal weight. So
isn't that exciting to be in that line, that little tiny line? It means so much. I know it shouldn't, right? Yes, but we can admit it does.
And I was up, my size was a size 18, especially for like slacks. And now I'm down, like a size 12, which is for me really, I haven't been a size 12 in 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that's feeling really good.
Well, you mentioned, obviously about the size and the weight change, but you also mentioned about your energy levels. So tell us more about those non-scale victories. Like, tell us how it's changed your life in other ways besides just a number.
Okay. Well, some of the things are connected to the weight, and some of them I think are just connected to the program itself and how it makes you feel. For one thing, I was having a lot of joint problems before I started. So a year and a half ago, I was taking Motrin and Tylenol all the time for knee problems and foot problems. No longer. That's not an issue anymore for me. And I can go up and down the stairs at school where I work, and it's not an issue anymore. And that feels great. But I've just felt more alert. I've never been a morning person, but now I work a job where I have to be at my workplace at 7. And at first that was really hard to adjust to, but now it's like, it's really not a problem getting up and being alert and being ready to go. So I feel like I'm living a more normal lifestyle now that's more in keeping with the kind of life that I want to live.
Oh, that's so amazing. I'm trying not to cry because I don't want to mess up my makeup, but I mean, just the thought of you like not having that brain fog, not having to take ibuprofen or Motrin for inflamed, joints, or just being able to run up and down the stairs. I mean, that just makes me feel so proud of you and so happy. Like you said, you've gotten a life that you deserve.
And so for me, I'm very interested in sharing about what's happened with me with other people. I had a relative that did keto for a little bit, but he had never really shared about it. I just knew that he did keto. But I'm much more open with people. I'm like, yeah, I'll be happy to tell you anything you want to know. And, I tell them about your website and your Facebook page. And I'm like, there's so much information out there. And there are so many people out there to support you as well. People that have been through it that can say, oh, this is normal. Don't worry about this. Reassure you that if you're losing weight slowly, that's a great thing. And so I'm like, I'll tell anybody. Now I don't try to like go out and tell people because
Right.
people
You're
are a
not on the
little
street
sensitive.
corner.
It's like
You're like,
it's like,
excuse me,
oh, you
ma'am.
should do keto. No. But if someone says, oh, I've noticed you've lost weight, how did you do it? I then segue into, well, here is how I did it. And it's the one thing that's really worked for me in the past 20 years. So I highly recommend people give it a go.
It's funny that you say that you're so proud and eager to share it because at first, I personally, after losing 140 pounds, I didn't want to talk about it, Deborah, because I was so worried I would jinx it. Isn't that ridiculous? Like, because I was the only one. Like, this is before keto. No one talked about it. This is back in
Uh-huh.
the Atkins era. So I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what it was called or why it was working. I honestly thought it might just be a metabolic Christmas miracle. I was like, shh, don't jinx it.
Don't want to, right. So, and what I loved is there are certain foods that I've always loved. And in most diet programs that I tried before, they were all off limits.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, well, can I completely change my eating habits? Can I do everything differently? And I thought, I'm not sure about that. But then I saw, I can still, look, look. And so,
Well,
yes,
tell me more about that. Now I have to know what you're talking about. Do you have any
well,
examples
things
you could
like,
share?
well, feta cheese, for example. I
Oh.
I have seen your recipe with the cucumbers and the onions and the feta cheese, and I love that recipe. That's one of my favorites. And I've always loved feta cheese and cheese in general, and macadamia nuts and avocados. Those are all wonderful foods that you could do so much with. And then I started using them to enhance vegetables because I had really never done that before. I'd never really, I ate my vegetables plain. And I thought, oh, you could add some cheese sauce here, or you could add some bacon, or you could put this in some other kind of oil to make it tastier. And I found that really, really made a difference in how things tasted, and they were more appetizing. And I found that I stopped missing having some starch accompaniment to my meal. Now, I have a couple family members here that still eat the starches. So if I'll make it for them, but I'm not tempted at all. I know I'm kind, but I'm not tempted. Really, I've not been bothered by giving up rice and things and mashed potatoes, even though those were things I used to eat all the time. I have found a good brand of pasta that's low carb. And so occasionally I will use that if I want to make spaghetti, but not regularly. I try to just focus on meat and vegetables in my main meal because I think that's the easiest way for me to do it.
And it sounds like it's working for you.
It is. And I am very happy with eating this way. And every now and then I find a new product that somebody recommends, somebody else say, oh, have you tried this keto ice cream? And I'm like, oh, let me check that out. And it's like, oh yeah, that's good. So, there's lots of things out there. I'm glad to see the food companies are starting to realize that more and more people are interested in this. And so they are providing some things, but I try to limit how many substitution things I do. I don't want to get into a problem with too many diet sweeteners or things like that. So I do try to focus on the basics, the meat, the vegetables with enhancements, the fat and cheese and dairy being used as enhancements to those. And then, the occasional treat when you feel like you have a need for a treat.
I love that. I know. I'm just listening. I'm like, that's it. If anybody was wondering how to do the dirty, lazy keto, I think they just need to listen to you, Debra, because I feel like you've got it in a nutshell. You've got it all figured out. It's like you're not eating a bunch of keto convenience foods, but you know that they're there. And if you choose to have them, you incorporate them once in a while. That makes sense. I know this sounds probably offensive to some people, but whatever. I'm a little offensive. But I like to say, what would skinny people do? Because I've never been a skinny person. I don't necessarily think of myself as a skinny person. But I always wondered, what would they do? You know what I mean? And those skinny people that are skinny their whole lives and don't struggle with weight, they do exactly what you just said. They enjoy a little treat once in a while, and then they go back to their healthy lifestyle, right? They don't overindulge and eat buckets of ice cream and trays of cookies like the behavior I used to do.
Well, I found I was thinner when I was younger, but I was raised by a mom that had very good eating habits. And so we did not snack very often. It was a rare and special treat to have a snack, and it wasn't a constant part of our diet. I worry about young people today at the school where I teach. I see so many young people that snack so often, and they talk about the things that they eat at home and the snacks that they have, and stopping at fast food restaurants. And, some of them are really too heavy for the age that they are. And I just worry about young people in general, because I think as a culture, we snack way too much. I did spend a summer in France when I was younger, and I was like, they don't snack. They don't snack. And I'm like, it was a little hard for me to adjust at first because I was a little bit into snacking at that time. And I'm like, they don't. They have wonderful meals, but they don't feel the constant need to open a bag of potato chips or grab a soda or other things all the time, like we've come accustomed to here in the United States. So I think cutting back and not snacking all the time is an important part of the strategy too. But it helps if you're not hungry. If you're eating proper keto foods and you're getting the fat that you need, you don't feel the cravings that cause you to go over to the pantry and see, oh, what do I have in the pantry that I really want to snack on? So it becomes less of a problem over time.
Well, it sounds like you've got the snacking part figured out. And you mentioned that in the beginning of our talk too. You said in the beginning of COVID, you were kind of feeling at home and your work had changed and the snacking was calling your name. So it sounds like you've gotten a hold of that though. And you've been able to kind of face that and figure out what would work for you so that wouldn't become a problem.
And I still, it's still something I have to be mindful of. I wish I could say, oh, I never have any cravings to snack at all. But occasionally I do, but I try to make sure that it is a keto food. So I'm looking for, an egg or some cheese or something like that. I definitely have given up doing all of the sugary or salty snack foods as much as I love them. It's just, I'm one of those people, I can't control it. If I start eating it, I want to eat a lot. So yeah. I just find that it's better to just pick something else that will satisfy me and yet not cause that insulin to spike and create unlimited cravings. Yeah. I think back now to how many things I was eating, donuts and regular soda and potato chips and I was really packing it in. And now it's just different. kind of surprises me still how different it is.
I know it's the miracle, right? It's the one I was telling you. I'm like, I'm afraid to talk about it because what if it jinx it? I mean, it really is surprising. And I know you mentioned like when you were overseas, you saw the way they ate so differently. And of course, in Europe, they're eating higher fat, full fat dairy products, right? And they're
Hmm.
eating delicious, rich foods, rich, delicious olive oils, and they're not eating all that commercial stuff like here in America. So it's interesting to think, maybe this is the way we're all supposed to be eating. I don't know.
I think that it's much healthier if you just focus on having what you want at meals and really try not to just eat constantly. We do have, just even on television, we see people opening the refrigerator all the time and they're always promoting foods and it's around. Today I was teaching. I teach at an elementary school, and I was teaching, and we had a little extra time at the end of class. And so I told the students they could watch a relaxation video and mentioned a couple possibilities. There's a kinetic sand one, and there's some relaxing music. And they wanted to watch one that had to do with food. And I said, I don't think that's a good choice. I
Yeah,
said,
steer him into something a little bit less food related,
yeah.
right?
I said, I try to watch what I eat and not eat in between meals. And I'd like to encourage you to think about doing that as well. And I said, if we watch things with food in them all the time, cupcakes and candy, it kind of triggers us a little
It
bit. So I
totally
said,
does.
let's watch something else instead. So we did.
Yeah, it's very mindful of you. I know my husband was trying to watch The Donut King or something, a documentary on Netflix the other day, and I was like, I cannot watch this. Like for
I,
me, it's still, I mean, I'm almost a decade later, and watching that triggers, urges and weird thoughts. And I'm like, I don't want to watch it. I'm like, it's crazy television. And I'm running out of the room and he's making fun of me. I'm
yeah,
like, watch something else. I don't want to watch a story about donuts for crying out
yeah.
loud.
I
Yeah, let's
I
watch
could
something
I
else.
used to be triggered by food logos. I would see the logo of a company's product that I like, and even without seeing a picture of the food, just the association of the name of the company with the food that I loved, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go buy some of that. And that's part of that whole, when you have too much insulin in your system, you are more receptive to that. So
Yeah.
I've learned that I'm much less triggered if I'm eating properly and not doing all the snacks all the time. I still miss popcorn though. I mean,
Oh,
going to a movie, I think I'll always miss
that's like the
popcorn.
pinnacle. That's like the Olympic level of dirty, lazy keto. We're going to work on that together. Well, you mentioned about the premium group and the support that you found there. Maybe you could
Yes.
tell some of our listeners about what that Facebook premium group is and why that worked for you.
Yes, it's a group that you pay a small monthly fee to join, but it's then the people that are really serious about doing keto and are also willing to support one another. And I found it really helpful, especially when I was starting, because I'd think, is it normal to do this or think this way? Or, how do you make that change? Plus, people were great with recipe sharing. They would suggest something and I've never thought of that. It's like, well, that's a wonderful idea. I think I'll give that a try. And then I became more familiar with your cookbooks as well and have made a lot of the recipes in there. And so with the recipe sharing and the words of encouragement from the other members, it's been a great experience. And we all go through some of the same challenges when we're trying to change the way we eat, and especially when we know we're trying to do this permanently. So this is
Yes.
not like, okay, for 2 weeks, I can give this up. It's like, no, I'm going to be making these changes permanently, change my whole way I think about food. And sometimes, you need a little encouragement, especially when you're stressed out. I always have been a stress eater. And so I find that when I find that I'm feeling that way, that if I go and share with people about it, it's very helpful.
It is.
So, and listen to ideas about other things you can do to relieve stress rather than, reaching into the pantry for something.
Right. And for me, I think, it's funny. It's like way back in the beginning when I first started all this, decided to talk about it and share my story, my goal initially was just to let people know they're not alone. Because I felt very alone. And I did for most of my life, like struggling with these issues and, being so hyper concerned about food and just having my weight all over the place. And I just didn't want other people to feel that way, that they were alone. And then even during the weight loss process, it's surprising. Everyone, a lot of people think from the outside it's so easy and roses and sunshine and it's all so fabulous. But sometimes it's hard. Like you said, you have family members at your house who maybe aren't on board or not eating the same as you. And yes, it can go well, but it can also be really difficult. So that was my goal in starting the Facebook support group. You know, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with the big group, which has, I don't know, like 250,000 people. But then I also host a smaller premium support group on Facebook that is subscription. It's through Facebook. It's not something I organize. And just a random fact, because I know some people freak out about these things, but Facebook actually contacted me. They picked 50 people in the world, believe it or not, 50 people to start their very first program of Facebook support groups. That would be a small group. Yeah, 50.
Okay.
Unbelievable. And I even got invited to go to their headquarters. I had to work. I didn't get to go. But it was a pilot program. And they recognized that we had amazing women and men that were very involved in our group. And they thought, well, maybe they might like a smaller group where it's more limited, more one-on-one attention, more like live classes or more interactive. And I'm glad they did, because it's been probably one of the most rewarding parts of Dirty Lazy Keto for me is getting to know people like you and helping, like you said, serious members achieve their weight loss goal and get rid of the drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
The drama from the big group. Sometimes there's the drama or the name calling or people that are unsupportive or off plan or cheating and want forgiveness and absolution. I mean, it just runs the gamut. But this group is just the serious women who are here to make it happen for the long haul.
Yes. And I'm a fairly analytical person. So for me, rather than what's helpful for me, if I feel myself being drawn to any old patterns of mine, is I stop and try to think, why is that happening? All right, what's happening in my life that's making me feel this way? Because there is definitely a connection. So rather than, feeling like guilt or shame, it's like, let's work through this and let's try to find out what are the trigger points, what are the things that are happening, and let's go back and see if we can fix that and do something differently. And that is another place where the support group was really helpful, because people that had been in similar situations said, here's what I did when I encountered this. If I went to a family event, here's what I did before I went, and here's how I talked about my family with it. And I just bring deviled eggs because everybody eats deviled eggs and I never have to worry. And then I always know that there's something for me. But, there are a lot of emotional issues connected with our weight. I think whether you're at the weight you want to be or not at the weight you want to be, we're always sensitive about it. And I think that we can be triggered emotionally for various reasons. So being able to talk with other people about it and say, this is kind of what I've experienced, and reassure other people is, I think, really useful. So
no, you're absolutely right. And it's I find it's wonderful and supportive for myself. I mean, we're all at different places, like you said, and to be able to be there for each other. And it's not just about the food. That's the funny part. People think, oh, what do I eat? Oh, then I lose weight. Not necessarily. Like it's so much more complex. And It sounds like you've hit on all the major issues. And that's why you're doing so well. I mean, 50 pounds from 200 to 150. I mean, you are amazing. You've done it. And you are a wonderful example of what it looks like and sounds like to have figured it out. So I'm just very grateful that you shared your story today. And I was wondering if you have any final advice that you'd like to share for maybe someone out there who's struggling.
I think if particularly for someone who's just starting or thinking about it, for me, what was very helpful is to write down foods that are encouraged on keto that you love. write down very specifically. I mean, for me, I think I mentioned earlier, macadamia nuts, olives, avocados. Write those down and make sure that you feature recipes that have those foods in them your first couple of weeks. Because if you're eating something you're really looking forward to, you're much more inclined to stay with it. I mean, I found out that sometimes, the other diet programs, when I would follow their rules and what they said, there were foods that I really didn't care for. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to eat this tonight. Oh, well, that's what's on the program. Whereas with Dirty Lazy Keto, it's like I'm in charge of what foods are going to be. I just need to know what are recommended foods and what are not recommended foods. And I can put together and customize it for me. And so I just love the fact that I could eat these foods that I really enjoyed and know that they were helping me and not hurting me. So that's what I did at first. I really loaded the pantry up with things that I knew that I would want to go see when I went into the closet, and things that I could combine together and make recipes with that I would look forward to.
That is the best advice I have heard all day. It's like you're focusing on foods you like, not that you don't like. You feel empowered to make the program or the lifestyle work for you, right? And you're enjoying yourself. You're not feeling deprived. I mean, you're not whining and like, I missed this, I missed that. It's like, no, you're not doing that. You're focusing on the foods that perhaps have been off limits your whole life, and you're focusing on them and enjoying them and celebrating this whole new lifestyle that's given you just a whole new way of life, it sounds like.
Yep. I tell people the magic moment was when I found out that dry champagne is acceptable on keto. I was like, oh, that is so wonderful.
Oh my goodness.
I mentioned my stay in France one time, and I was staying in the region where they make champagne. So I became very fond of it. And, it's an occasional treat. But
of course,
knowing that that's one of the best choices that you can make, I was like, okay, this is definitely my program.
That was the deal clincher.
That was the deal clincher.
Well, we're going to end on that note. That is wonderful advice, Debra. And I love how honest you were and how inspirational your story was. And I hope our listeners and viewers were able to connect. And I hope that they'll leave some comments below and just share with you maybe their experiences and maybe how some of your advice resonated with them. Because I feel like we're in this together. I feel like we need to support one another. No one's going to be able to do this alone. I mean, it takes a village. So let's all support one another and stay tuned for another inspirational episode. So thanks for joining me today, Debra.
All right. You are very welcome. Thanks.
So if you found today's video to be helpful, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and then subscribe to the Dirty Lazy Keto YouTube channel. Turn on your notifications so you'll never miss an update. You can also find me on Instagram at Dirty Lazy Keto. And for more information about any of my support groups or any of my books, you can always go to dirtylazyketo.com for more information. I'm here to support you. I'm here to help. I know you can do it.